Be me 32 when this all started. Lived a pretty normal life, I thought. Decent job as a head mechanic at a respectable dealership. Not glamorous, but it paid the bills. Married to Beth for 7 years. We had a small house in the suburbs, the kind with a 2-car garage and a lawn I had to mow every Saturday. That garage was my sanctuary. My dad was a gearhead, taught me everything. How an engine breathes, how to feel the soul of a car. It was more than a job for me, it was art. My main project, my baby, was a '67 Mustang Fastback I found rotting in a field. Paid next to nothing for it. It was mostly rust and dead spiders. Spent years bringing it back. Every spare dollar, every spare hour went into that car. For me, it was therapy. The world goes quiet when you're focusing on getting a wiring harness just right. Beth never got it. In the beginning, she thought it was a cute hobby. Then it became that pile of junk in the garage. Then it became a weapon she'd use in arguments. I'd come in from the garage, hands covered in grease. She'd be sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. The look on her face was always the same: disappointment. She'd make comments about how her friend Karen's husband just got a promotion in his finance job. "They're going to Tuscany this year," she'd say, not even looking up. I'd just nod, go wash my hands. Told her the Mustang was an investment. These things, when done right, are worth a fortune. She'd just scoff. An investment is something you can use now, Justin, not a dusty relic that stinks up the house. It wasn't just the car, it was everything. My friends were immature. My clothes weren't aspirational. She was always talking about our brand, like we were a company, not two people. She'd started getting really into these online influencers who preached about female empowerment and not settling. A lot of talk about vibrating higher and cutting out low-energy people. I guess I was low energy. The final few months were cold. The house was quiet. I'd retreat to the garage just to have some peace. Working on the engine, the smell of gasoline and oil. It was the only place I felt like myself. One evening, probably a Tuesday, I came inside earlier than usual, figured I'd surprise her, order some takeout from that Thai place she liked. She was at the dining room table, which was weird. We always ate on the couch. The table was clear except for a single folder. She had this look on her face, like a CEO about to announce layoffs. She tells me she wants to talk. My stomach dropped. I knew this wasn't about what to watch on TV. She lays it all out. A rehearsed speech. She's not happy. She hasn't been happy for years. She feels like she's outgrown the relationship. She said I had no ambition beyond my greasy hobby, that she was tired of waiting for me to step up and become the man she deserved. She used phrases like emotional labor and said our marriage was a source of toxic masculinity because I was too quiet and didn't share my feelings enough. I just stared at her. I shared everything with her. The garage was the one place I didn't have to talk. I could just be. I tried to argue, reminded her of our plans, how we were saving for a bigger place, how the Mustang was almost done and would be worth a down payment on its own. It was like talking to a brick wall. Her eyes were empty. She had already made up her mind. The folder on the table, it was from a divorce lawyer. She'd already had a consultation. I felt like an idiot. Here I was thinking we were a team and she was drafting players for the other side. The next few weeks were a blur of numb reality. I moved into the guest room. We lived like ghosts in the same house. My best friend Ross was my rock. He came over as soon as I called him, took one look at me and just said, "I knew it. I never trusted her." He told me to lawyer up immediately, said that this wasn't going to be an amicable split. He was right. Beth's lawyer was a piranha in a $1,000 suit. The first meeting was a joke. He talked, and my lawyer took notes. They painted a picture of me as this lazy, unmotivated man-child who wasted all our money on a rust bucket while his poor, ambitious wife withered on the vine. They twisted everything. My steady job at the dealership, a dead-end position with no room for advancement, my years of work on the car, frivolous spending of marital assets on a depreciating hobby item. They didn't seem to get that classic cars appreciate. They didn't care. The narrative was what mattered. The process dragged on for what felt like an eternity. They demanded the house be sold immediately. They demanded an official appraisal of the Mustang project, so its value could be included in the asset pool. The appraiser they sent was some clown who dealt with insurance claims for totaled sedans. He looked at my masterpiece, the hand-rebuilt 302 engine, the custom upholstery I was still working on, and valued it at basically the cost of scrap metal. My lawyer tried to fight it, but it was just easier for the court to accept the official number. In the courtroom, Beth played the victim perfectly, cried on the stand about how she dreamed of having a family, but I was more interested in carburetors than children. We had agreed to wait on kids until we were more financially stable. It was a mutual decision, but in that room, it became another sin I had committed against her. The judge, a woman in her late 50s, looked at me with open disdain. I was just another useless husband in her courtroom that day. The gavel finally came down. The house was to be sold. Proceeds split 50-50. All our savings 50-50. My retirement fund 50-50. And because of my stable job and her sudden unemployment, she quit her part-time job the week she filed for divorce. I was ordered to pay her alimony for 2 years to help her get back on her feet. I walked out of that courthouse feeling like I'd been mugged, but the mugger had the law on their side. Ross was waiting for me. I just got in his truck and we drove. Didn't say a word for 20 minutes. Finally, he just said, "The game is rigged, man. You never stood a chance." It was the truest thing I'd heard in months. The house sold fast. The market was hot. The day of the closing, I handed my keys to the new owners, a happy young couple. They looked like us 7 years ago. It was a special kind of hell. I watched Beth leave the lawyer's office, check in hand, with a small, triumphant smile on her face. No sadness, no regret, just victory. That was the last time I saw her for a long, long time. I was left with my half, which sounded like a lot until you realized it had to cover alimony, lawyer fees, and the cost of starting a new life from scratch. I had my tools, my clothes, and the Mustang, which was now officially and legally worthless. I had nowhere to go. Couldn't afford an apartment, not a decent one anyway. Rent was insane. I spent a week on Ross's couch, just staring at the ceiling. I felt hollowed out. Everything I had worked for, my entire adult life, was gone. Ross let me mope for exactly 1 week. Then one morning, he threw a newspaper at my head, the classifieds. "Get up. We're going looking." He drove me around the industrial part of town. Old warehouses, machine shops, gritty places. We found a listing for a small industrial garage for rent. Not much more than a concrete box with a roll-up door. But it was cheap. And it had a tiny office upstairs with a toilet and a sink. "It's a shithole," Ross said. "Yeah," I replied. "But it's a shithole you can afford, and you can work and live here. No one will bother you." He was right. I took it. Moving in was the most depressing day of my life. My bed was an air mattress in a dusty office. My kitchen was a microwave and a mini fridge. I had my Mustang towed to the new place. It looked as sad and out of place as I felt. For the first month, I just went to work at the dealership, came back to my concrete box, and slept. I was running on autopilot. Then one Saturday, I couldn't sleep. The sun was coming up. I went downstairs into the main garage space. I looked at the Mustang, covered in a dusty tarp. Something just snapped in me. Anger. Not sad, pathetic anger. Hot, focused anger. She thought this was junk. The lawyer thought it was junk. The whole world thought I was a joke. "Fine," I said out loud to the empty garage. "I'll show you." It was like a switch flipped. I pulled the tarp off the car and I got to work. I worked every night. After my shift at the dealership, I'd come back and work until 2 or 3 in the morning. My life became a simple loop. Dealership, garage, sleep, repeat. Ross would bring me pizza and beer sometimes. He never stayed long, just checked to make sure I was still sane. He was the only person I saw besides my coworkers. The alimony payments were a bitter pill to swallow every month, a constant reminder of my failure. But every time that money left my account, I'd go work on the car for an extra hour. I poured all of that frustration and rage into the metal, sanding the body until it was perfectly smooth, tuning the engine until it purred like a kitten and roared like a lion. Doing the upholstery myself, stitch by stitch. The car became my obsession, but a healthy one. It was something I could control, something I could build. While the rest of my life had been demolished, here, I was creating. After about 6 months of this manic work, it was done. The Mustang was beautiful, deep Highland green paint, gleaming chrome. The engine was a masterpiece. It was better than I had ever imagined. I stood there, looking at it, And for the first time since the divorce, I felt a flicker of pride. Now what? I didn't have the space to keep it, and I needed the money. The goal was always to sell it. I took some high-quality pictures and posted an ad online. Classic car forums, specialty sites. I listed it for a high but fair price. A price that reflected the thousands of hours of work. A week went by. Nothing. 2 weeks. A few lowball offers from tire kickers. I started to feel that old doubt creep in. Maybe Beth was right. Maybe it was just a pile of junk. Then I got an email. It was from an older gentleman, a collector. He wanted to see the car in person. He lived a few hours away. He showed up the next weekend, drove a pristine old Porsche. He spent 2 hours looking at the Mustang. Didn't say much. He checked every weld, ran his hand over the paint, listened to the engine with his eyes closed. Finally, he looked at me. "You did this yourself?" I nodded. "All of it? Except for the final paint spray. Don't have a professional booth." He nodded slowly. "Son, this isn't just a restoration. This is a resurrection." He offered me my full asking price. No haggling. I must have looked stunned because he just smiled. Craftsmanship is worth paying for. They don't make things like this anymore. And they don't make guys like you either. We shook hands. He wired the money the next day. When the transport truck came to pick up the Mustang, I felt a pang of sadness. But watching it roll away, I also felt something else. Freedom. The money hit my bank account. It was a life-changing amount. After paying off my remaining legal bills, I still had a very healthy nest egg. Enough to live on for a year, maybe more. I sat in my crappy little office above the garage, looking at my bank balance. I could get a nice apartment, get out of this dump. I could go on a vacation, try to forget the last year. I thought about what the old man said. Craftsmanship is worth paying for. A crazy idea started to form in my head. What if I did this for a living? I hated my job at the dealership. It was just about moving units, upselling customers on useless warranties. There was no soul in it. But this, bringing old cars back to life, this felt real. The next day I walked into the dealership and gave my 2 weeks' notice. My boss thought I was insane. "You're throwing away a steady paycheck for a pipe dream," he said. It probably was. But it was my pipe dream. I used the money from the Mustang as my seed capital. I registered a business name, Justin's Classic Restorations. I bought better equipment, a vehicle lift, professional diagnostic tools, a better welding rig. I spruced up the garage, painted the floors, installed better lighting. I started small, took out an ad in a local car club newsletter. No project too far gone. Passionate work for passionate owners. My first client was a guy with a rusty old Triumph he'd inherited from his father. He didn't have a lot of money, but he had a lot of love for the car. I gave him a fair price. I worked on that little British car with the same focus I gave my Mustang. When I was done, the owner was speechless. He actually teared up. He told all his buddies in the car club about me. Word of mouth is a powerful thing in a niche community. Suddenly I was busy. A '69 Camaro, a '57 Bel Air, a Jaguar E-Type that needed a complete engine rebuild. My days were long, 12, 14 hours, 7 days a week. But it wasn't work, not really. I was building something. For myself. On my own terms. Every finished car that rolled out of my garage was a victory. My reputation grew. I became the guy you went to if you wanted it done right. No shortcuts. I was making good money. Better money than I ever made at the dealership. I moved out of the upstairs office and into a small, clean apartment nearby. Life was simple. My work, my apartment, and Friday night beers with Ross. I didn't date. Didn't even think about it. The wound was still too raw. I just focused on my craft. I heard bits and pieces about Beth through the grapevine. Apparently, she got a new boyfriend almost immediately. Some guy who ran a tech startup, wore expensive sneakers, and talked a lot about disruption. They went on lavish vacations. She posted it all online, I was told. I never looked. Ross told me she was living the life she always wanted, the one I couldn't give her. A part of me was happy for her. A much bigger part of me just didn't care. Her world and my world were now on different planets. Mine smelled like motor oil and success. Hers smelled like whatever her new boyfriend's expensive cologne was. The final alimony payment went out. I remember staring at the transaction confirmation on my computer screen. It was over. The last chain was broken. I went out and bought a ridiculously expensive bottle of scotch to celebrate, drank it with Ross in the garage, surrounded by the beautiful skeletons of future masterpieces. We didn't even talk about her. We talked about cars, business, the future, my future. For the first time, it looked bright. I was happy, genuinely, peacefully happy. And I was about to find out that, for some people, my happiness was the most offensive thing in the world. The business was now in its second year. Things were different. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. I had a 6-month waiting list. People were shipping cars to me from out of state. I hired a kid, an apprentice. Young guy named Kevin, who was hungry to learn, reminded me of myself at his age. Having him around freed me up to focus on the more intricate parts of the restorations, and to actually manage the business side of things. I finally moved out of that small apartment and bought a place. Nothing extravagant. A small house on a decent plot of land a bit outside of town. The key feature? A massive detached 4-car garage. It was more home to me than the house was. I started taking better care of myself, too. Ross had been bugging me about it. You can't live on coffee and takeout forever, he'd said. So I started working out. Nothing crazy, just a simple home gym setup in the basement. I stopped eating junk, started cooking for myself. The physical work in the garage kept me lean, and the gym added some muscle I hadn't had before. I wasn't trying to look good for anyone. I just wanted to feel good, to feel strong. I felt like I was rebuilding myself, piece by piece, just like one of my cars, sanding off the old damaged parts, priming for a new start. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Work was challenging and rewarding. My finances were secure. I even started a new personal project, a vintage Porsche 911, my dream car. It felt good to be working on something for myself again, with my own money, in my own space. I was completely disconnected from my old life. Hadn't heard a thing about Beth in over a year. I assumed she was off in her new shiny life. That assumption, like many I'd made about her, was dead wrong. It started with a phone call, an unknown number. I was under the hood of a Corvette, so I answered on speaker. Justin's Classics, this is Justin. Silence for a second, then a woman's voice. Justin? It's Beth. My hands froze. I felt my entire body go rigid. I hadn't heard that voice in almost 3 years. It was like a ghost whispering from a forgotten tomb. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, holding a wrench. She kept talking, a weird, cheerful tone in her voice, like we'd just spoken yesterday. I know it's been a while. I was just thinking about you and wanted to see how you were doing. I still didn't speak. My mind was racing. Why was she calling? What did she want? Kevin, my apprentice, was watching me from across the garage with a confused look on his face. Her cheerful tone faltered. Justin, are you there? What do you want, Beth? My voice was flat, devoid of any emotion. I just wanted to talk, to catch up. We have nothing to catch up on. The check stopped. Our business is concluded. There was another pause, a longer one this time. That's a pretty cold way to put it, she said, her voice now tinged with a little bit of hurt, the manufactured kind. It's the accurate way to put it. I'm busy. Goodbye. I hung up before she could say another word. Kevin just raised his eyebrows. Ex-wife? The one and only, I said, trying to get my heart rate back to normal. I tried to shake it off, to get back to work. But I was rattled. That night, I told Ross about the call. He wasn't surprised. The startup boyfriend probably went bust, he said, taking a sip of his beer. The money dried up. Now she's sniffing around to see if you have any. I didn't want to believe it. It felt too cynical, even for her. But Ross had a track record of being right about these things. A week later, the proof arrived. Not as a phone call, but in person. It was a Saturday afternoon. Kevin had gone home. I was in the garage, sketching out some custom fabrication ideas. A car pulled up my long driveway. A beat-up old Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door. A far cry from the fancy white BMW she used to drive. She got out of the car. She looked different. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by something you'd find at a discount store. Her hair wasn't as perfectly styled. She looked tired and angry. I put down my pencil and walked to the big open bay door of the garage, wiping my hands on a rag. I didn't invite her in. I just stood there, blocking the entrance. You shouldn't be here, Beth. I tried calling, she said, as if that gave her an open invitation. She peered past me, into the garage. Her eyes went wide. She saw the cars, a half-restored Ferrari dyno, the Porsche 911 I was working on for myself, the pristine Corvette. She saw the top-of-the-line equipment, the organized workstations, the sheer scale of the operation. This wasn't some hobby in a suburban garage anymore. This was a serious professional business. Her eyes scanned everything like an appraiser. You could almost see the dollar signs clicking in her head. "Wow, Justin," she said, her voice a mix of awe and something else. Resentment. "You've done well for yourself." "I'm busy," I repeated from our phone call. She ignored me. She took a step closer, trying to get a better look. "So, this is what you did with the money," she said. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. "What money?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "Our money. The money from the house." I actually laughed, a short, harsh sound. "The money from the house went to your lawyer and your new life, Beth. This? I built this with my own 2 hands, out of the garage you kicked me out of." Her face hardened. The fake pleasantries were gone. "You never would have done this if you were still with me," she spat. "You were lazy, unambitious. I gave you the push you needed." I just stared at her, amazed at the audacity, the sheer unadulterated narcissism required to frame her betrayal as a favor. "So you're here for a thank you?" I asked sarcastically. "I'm here because I made a mistake," she said, her tone suddenly shifting back to soft and pleading. It was dizzying. "I was young and stupid. I listened to the wrong people. All that talk about empowerment. It just made me lonely." She tried to play the sympathy card, told me a sob story about the tech bro boyfriend, how he'd spent all her money on his failed company and then left her with the debt, how she was working a dead-end job, struggling to pay rent on a crappy apartment. It was the role reversal I never thought I'd see. She was living the life I had started with after she left me. She took another step toward me, reaching out a hand as if to touch my arm. "I miss you, Justin. I miss what we had." I stepped back, out of her reach. "No, you don't," I said calmly. "You don't miss me. You miss my potential. But the thing is, you don't get to cash in on a stock you sold years ago." Her face twisted into a mask of pure fury. The victim act evaporated in a second. "You owe me," she hissed. All of this. It was built on our foundation. I am entitled to a piece of this. I put 7 years of my life into you." That was the moment I stopped seeing the woman I once loved and saw a complete stranger, a parasite looking for a host. "The court decided what you were entitled to, Beth. You got your half. In fact, thanks to alimony, you got more than half. You pissed it away on a fantasy. What I built after you left has nothing to do with you." I pointed down the driveway. "Get off my property." She just stood there, shaking with rage. "You're a selfish bastard," she screamed. "All this success, and you can't even help the woman who was by your side." "You weren't by my side," I said, my voice dangerously quiet now. "You were on my back, and I'm finally standing up straight because that weight is gone." Her mouth opened and closed. She had nothing. No more arguments, no more manipulations. Just pure, impotent rage. She finally turned around, stomped back to her beater car, and slammed the door. She revved the engine, a sad, rattling sound, and peeled out of my driveway, kicking up gravel. I stood there for a long time after she was gone, the dust settling around me. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel angry. I just felt peace. It was finally, definitively over. I walked back into my garage. The smell of oil, metal, and paint filled the air. It smelled like home. I picked up my tools and got back to work on the Porsche, my car, my life, my rules. My phone buzzed a few hours later. It was Ross. "So, I heard you had a visitor. One of my neighbors was a friend of his, small town." "Yeah." "You okay?" he asked. I looked around my garage, at the beautiful machines I was creating, at the life I had built from the ground up. "Better than okay, man," I said, a real smile spreading across my face. "I'm free."